Okay. Hello, and welcome to the May board meeting of the Alexander Local School District. We have roll call.
Mrs. Edis.
Here.
Mr. Regan.
Here.
Mr. Barnes.
Here.
Mr. Collins.
Here.
Mr. Ramsey.
Here.
Please stand and join me in the pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. First, we have the adoption of the agenda with the corrected date on board initiated business. Item B, the first effective date would be May 12th, not the 10th. So other than that, I'll make the motion to adopt the agenda.
Seconded.
Roll.
Mrs. Edis.
Yes.
Mr. Regan.
Yes.
Mr. Barnes.
Yes.
Mr. Collins.
Yes.
Mr. Ramsey.
Yes.
Public participation for agenda items. And we have the consent agenda. Any items need to be removed? Then can we have a motion?
Made.
Seconded. Roll.
Mrs. Edis.
Yes.
Mr. Regan.
Yes.
Mr. Barnes.
Yes.
Mr. Collins.
Yes.
And Mr. Ramsey.
Yes.
Under Treasurer's recommendations, it's recommended that Board of Education approves the updated five-year forecast as required by Ohio Revised Code 5705.391. I'll make the motion.
Seconded.
Discussion. Aaron, would you like to?
Sure, yeah. I gave you guys the updated forecast along with the change document highlighting the significant changes since the November adoption. If you notice on the revenue side, the most significant changes were in the public utility and the income tax, which I had communicated with you earlier about the increase in the public utility valuation that a little over $7 million in additional valuation from public utilities that we weren't anticipating, which that will generate approximately $250,000 in additional revenue per year. I don't anticipate or have any knowledge to expect additional big increases like that within the next 5 years, but we'll just have to wait and see. As you know, public utility is a lot harder to predict than residential because there's so many unknowns there. Another significant increase above what was passed in November is on the income tax. We've had our first full year of collections now. We got our April distribution last month. That was the final distribution of this fiscal year. So for our first year of collections, we collected a little over $1.8 million. When we went on the ballot, the Department of Taxation was projecting a little over 1.6, so it is producing just a little bit better than what the Department of Taxation projected, and that's even with COVID and everything that we dealt with there. So that's a positive thing. Oh, I thought somebody had a question. That was the most significant changes from the revenue side. Now on the expenditure side, there was adjustments made for the changes and the updates to the capital improvement plan, which you'll be approving in the next motion. And then obviously it's just some inflationary increases with the inflationary issues that we're all dealing with in our everyday lives. We're dealing with it as a school district too. So there's some adjustments in the expenditures going forward there. Hopefully maybe they'll get better, but we can't, anticipate that at this point. I just want to explain something for fiscal year 22. Like when you look at the expenditures, you'll see a change from the November forecast to this May forecast of an increase in expenditures of $700,000. And there are some increases in expenditures from the last forecast, but the $700,000 figure is deceiving because $530,000 of the $700,000 is just in advances. And so what an advance is is you get reimbursed your federal grants after the fact, so you spend the money first and then the state reimburses you for the federal grants. But the law does not allow you to continue operating with a fund that's has a negative balance. So we advance money from the general fund. It shows up as an expenditure, and then when the grant reimburses the district, we reimburse the general fund, and then that shows up as a revenue. So $500,000 of the $700,000 is just because of the unexpected advances that we had to do. It's not even an expenditure, but it shows up as an expenditure. It's more of a loan out and then a
Is that part
payback.
of the buses?
No, that was just because of the ESSER fund,
Oh,
because it took so long to get everything approved for our ESSER grant with the state. So we had to advance money from the general fund to the ESSER fund so we could still pay the bills out of that account. And then when they gave us the receipt or the income, or sent the revenue for the ESSER, then we just put that money back into the general fund. So I just wanted to point that out because that kind of looks a little off there, so. But outside of that, I mean, it's actually the overall picture for the 5-year period is improved. It's improved from the November forecast, and if you have any other specific questions, I'll be happy to answer them, so.
All right. Roll.
Mrs. Udis,
Yes.
Mr. Regan,
Yes.
Mr. Barnes,
Yes.
Mr. Collins,
Yes.
Mr. Ramsey.
Yes.
Under item B, it's recommended the Board of Education approve the updated capital improvement plan. Do I have a motion?
Made.
I'll second.
Discussion. Back to you, Aaron. Any big differences between what was there?
Yeah, so the capital improvement plan, this is a work in progress, just like the forecast. It's going to change each and every year. Just even sitting down with Brian, sometimes we'll sit down and have conversations when we're working on the grounds and maintenance part, and things will pop up in his head that he didn't think of. Just like the one thing you'll notice on there this time, there's some replacements for the kitchen ovens. Now, we have 8 total in the kitchen. They're about $12,000 a piece at this point. Those weren't in the original, or the one that we approved the last time. Brian just didn't think of it, and obviously I didn't think of it. But the thing to also note about the capital improvement plan is just because there's something on there doesn't mean that it's going to happen. We're trying to plan and predict those expenditures so that if they do happen or they do occur, we're prepared for them. But if we come to that year and the ovens are working fine, we're still able to get parts, everything's sufficient, we're going to continue to do that, just like normal. But we're trying to be as prepared as possible for those large expenses when they could possibly come up down the road, so.
Roll.
Mrs. Udis,
Yes.
Mr. Regan,
Yes.
Mr. Barnes,
Yes.
Mr. Collins,
I'm going to abstain. I haven't had a chance to review it in detail, so I don't think it's right for me to say one way or the other.
and Mr. Ramsey.
Yes.
Under Superintendent's recommendations, it's recommended the Board of Education employ the following for the 2021-22 school year. Hold on a second. Yep. Pending their meeting all state and local requirements. I'm not going to read them all, so.
So moved.
Second. Discussion. Roll.
Mrs. Udis,
Yes.
Mr. Regan,
Yes.
Mr. Barnes,
Yes.
Mr. Collins,
Yes.
Mr. Ramsey.
Yes.
Item D, it's recommended the Board of Education approve payment of $250 to Melinda Mowry for the production of the senior class video.
So moved.
Seconded.
Discussion. Just want to say, I think I saw you. Thank you for doing this. It's always a great thing, every graduation. So, roll.
Mrs. Udis,
Yes.
Mr. Regan,
Yes.
Mr. Barnes,
Yes.
Mr. Collins,
Yes.
Mr. Ramsey.
Yes.
Item C, it's recommended the Board of Education grant a 1-year contract to Sheila Cullums pending her meeting all state and local requirements.
So moved.
Seconded.
Discussion. Roll.
Mrs. Udis,
Yes.
Mr. Regan,
Yes.
Mr. Barnes,
Yes.
Mr. Collins,
Yes.
Mr. Ramsey.
Yes.
Item D, it's it's recommended the Board of Education accept the resignation of Melissa Guffey effective the end of the 2021-22 school year. So moved.
Seconded.
Discussion. I just want to say thank you for all that you've done for the school district during your time here. You've made a lot of kids' lives a lot better, and Trimble got a gift. So, thank you. Roll.
Mrs. Udis,
Yes.
Mr. Regan,
Reluctantly, yes.
Mr. Barnes,
Yes.
Mr. Collins.
I'd also like to say thank you to Mrs. Guffey. She's, as a parent, well, our family's 3 students and 2 parents that have been through the elementary, so thank you 5 times over. And yeah,
And Mr. Ramsey.
Yes.
Item E, it's recommended the Board of Education employ the following supplemental for the 2022-23 school year pending their meeting all state and local requirements. Again, I'm not going to read through the list.
so moved.
Seconded. Discussion? Roll.
Mrs. Udis,
Yes.
Mr. Regan,
Yes.
Mr. Barnes,
Yes.
Mr. Collins,
Yes,
and Mr. Ramsey.
Yes.
Item F, the non-renewal, approve the non-renewal of the following 2021-22 school year supplemental contracts. Again, not reading through them.
so moved.
Seconded. Discussion? Roll.
Mrs. Udis,
Yes.
Mr. Regan,
Yes.
Mr. Barnes,
Yes.
Mr. Collins,
Yes,
Mr. Ramsey.
Yes.
Item G, it's recommended the Board of Education approve the enclosed list of district-adopted curriculum for the 2022-23 school year and beyond.
Moved.
Seconded. Discussion? Roll.
Mrs. Udis,
Yes.
Mr. Regan,
Yes.
Mr. Barnes,
Yes.
Mr. Collins,
yes,
and Mr. Ramsey.
Yes.
Item H, it's recommended the Board of Education approve entering into contract with Musco Sport Lighting for the retrofit of the stadium lighting.
Moved.
Seconded. Discussion. I'll say that I'm conflicted on this item, is that I'm not really sure that the cost of the lighting is getting us the benefit in such, it's not worth the benefit. I'll make that a statement. So I do understand it's an upgrade to our lighting system. I'm just concerned that the cost, we won't gain back from benefits, whether it be financially or through just the benefit of the students using it. Other discussion items?
Is this driven by the track design? Is it forcing us into needing to change the lighting?
It's not a forcement of needing new lighting, but as we talked about the track project and we moved through it, if we're making upgrades, now would be the time to upgrade the lighting system. The halogen lighting systems are a thing of the past. A lot of districts are retrofitting back to LED lighting now. It was a suggestion through the architects that if we're making these improvements, now would be the time to improve the lighting. It would be a better, brighter lighting. It would also be a green, saving the energy resources, so we would use less energy with brighter lights. The other concern Brian McCollum and I have is we don't know how many more years they're going to make the halogen lights and the balances for those old lighting systems. So now is a good opportunity. The longer we wait, we all know the inflation is going up consistently. It will be more expensive down the road.
So forgive me for the unfair question, but trying to think of the whole project that we're looking at down there, the track, stands, lighting, and to a small extent, the fencing and concession stand. The amount for the lighting is about 150 some K, right?
in your board packet.
My memory says 150, but I hate to use numbers
I'm
without
thinking
being
it's
sure.
around 138.
147, right there.
147. So we had the discussion last month, and we know next month we're going to be talking about the track. And there's the debate of a 6-lane versus 8-lane. And the delta for a 6-lane is 250,000. So now to the dirty question. If you had to make your choice between an 8-lane with the existing lighting or a 6-lane with upgraded lighting, what would you do?
If you're asking me, my recommendation would be the 8-lane track and upgrade the lighting. That is what would be best for the district at this time.
And given the choice financially that I asked, though, if you have to pick between the two, would you recommend?
I would pick the 8-lane track.
Okay, thank you.
Other discussion? Roll.
Mrs. Edis.
I don't believe the benefit is worth the cost in this year, no.
Mr. Regan.
No.
Mr. Barnes.
Yes.
Mr. Collins.
I'd rather look at the 8 lanes, so I'll go no on the lighting.
And Mr. Ramsey.
No.
Item I, it's recommended the Board of Education approve entering into contract with Dant Clayton for the additional stadium seating.
Moved?
Seconded. Discussion.
And this is clearly part of upgrading the track with the necessity of, when we make the track surface better, we're going to need to have people sit in the stands as opposed to stand on the track and talk with the players and, and the refs during soccer and football games. So this was what we and the architects thought were necessary to build extra space on the home side for the people who now stand on the side of the track. And the cost is about $130,000 for a net gain of about 166 seats, with no change to the visitor side.
Roll.
Mrs. Edis.
Yes.
Mr. Regan.
Yes.
Mr. Barnes.
Yes.
Mr. Collins.
Yes.
Mr. Ramsey.
Yes.
It is recommended that the Board of Education accept the proposal submitted by the Nutrition Group for Food Service Management Services to begin July 2nd, 2022 through June 30th, 2023.
Moved.
Seconded. Discussion. Roll.
Mrs. Edis.
Yes.
Mr. Regan.
Yes.
Mr. Barnes.
Yes.
Mr. Collins.
Yes.
Mr. Ramsey.
Yes.
Under board-initiated business, we have the item A, to employ Will Hampton as superintendent of schools for a 5-year term effective August 1st, 2022, under the terms and conditions set forth in the contract of superintendent as presented to this board, subject to confirmation of licensure and compliance with any procedures required by law to effectuate such employment with the Alexander Local School District Board of Education. So moved. Go ahead.
Seconded.
Discussion. I'd just like to thank everybody within this district for that includes community members, staff, administration, and the board members for their participation in that project. And Mr. Hampton and his wife, thank you for coming today. I just wanted to say thank you to all. Other discussion items? Roll.
Mrs. Edis.
Yes.
Mr. Regan.
Yes.
Mr. Barnes.
Yes.
Mr. Collins.
Yes.
And Mr. Ramsey.
Yes.
Item B, to employ Will Hampton as a consultant pursuant to revise code section 3313.171, effective May 12th, 2022, under the terms and conditions set forth in the consulting agreement as presented to this board. So moved.
Second.
Discussion. Roll.
Mrs. Udis.
Yes.
Mr. Regan.
Yes.
Mr. Barnes.
Yes.
Mr. Collins.
Yes.
Mr. Ramsey.
Yes.
Any board reports that weren't? Public participation on non-agenda items. The next scheduled meeting was moved from the second Wednesday of the month to Wednesday, June 29th. For those that have their calendars marked, it will be Wednesday, June 29th. I think I've confirmed with everybody that that date worked for you all.
Yeah.
All right. Then can I get a motion for adjournment?
So moved?
Seconded. Roll.
Mrs. Udis.
Yes.
Mr. Regan.
Yes.
Mr. Barnes.
Yes.
Mr. Collins.
Yes.
Mr. Ramsey.
Yes.